Hello, everybody, and welcome to Thought Leader Thursday on the week of June 16th, being the June 19th, which is the Thursday of that week. We are pre-recording this. By the time this is released, the Grand Prix that we're going to discuss here has already happened, and we are wishing Claire best of luck as she competes in this. Today, I am with three of my fellow ACEs. We have new friends and old friends. Very excited to talk today. We have Jarrod Thuener, who's been doing this a long time. We're excited to hear his story. We have Nicole Johnson, 2018 winner. Jarrod won. When did you win?
15.
15 and
last year, 21. Yep.
Two-time winner, Jarrod Thuener. And then Claire McCollough, who is a new to the ACE group. We're very excited to have her, and we're excited to cheer her on as we watch her compete in the Grand Prix. So if you guys could do me a favor and just real quick run through a little bit of your history with Alteryx and the Grand Prix, and then we'll just start there. That's cool.
Sure, I'll go first.
Okay.
All right, so Nicole Johnson, my history with Alteryx started probably about 7 years ago. And so I used it for a couple years before the Anaheim conference in 2018. And that's when I became both an ACE and got to compete in the Grand Prix. And so that was super exciting, getting to try to reclaim the victory last year in the virtual Grand Prix, but Jarrod took that one from me. But I think my Alteryx story is kind of fun now and is coming full circle. As of a couple weeks ago, I just became the new PM for Designer Desktop at Alteryx. So a bit like coming home. That's awesome. That's my full circle Alteryx story.
So we're saying if we have complaints about it, we need to talk to you directly.
Yeah.
Everybody take a good look at that.
That's a can of worms.
Jarrod?
I've been working with Alteryx for about 15 years. Started going to conferences back in 09, 08, 09, it's got to be. And so I've done a lot of Grand Prix. Probably in the last 6-7 years, they started doing prelims. So that's been a fun setup. And every year it changes a little bit, which is great.
And then Claire.
Yeah, so I learned Alteryx a little less than 2 years ago. I learned it as part of a class. I just graduated with my undergrad from the University of Colorado Boulder, and I worked as a data engineer for a small company called Gibis over the last year, and I'll be working in public accounting this coming summer in forensic accounting.
Accounting just sounds like so much fun. Actually, probably with Alteryx, it is a lot of fun, right? So
it does make it a little more entertaining.
Yeah. Real quick, I have to apologize. I totally said June. It's May 18th. We will be doing this the week of May 16th.
What even is time anymore, Treyson?
I don't know, man. Like, it's the worst. Speaking of time, Jarrod, you've been competing in these since 2009, you said? When was the first one?
09. It might have been 10 was my first one, but
Gotcha.
I might have watched 09 the first time and then competed the next year. Back then it was like, I think it was like 12, 14, 16 of us in a much smaller room. And we all had our computers out and we would solve the questions were far different. Like there was the one from first off, it was like a marathon. It was like you have 12 questions, like that's how many laps you did, and then It was like a 2.5 hour ordeal. It was kind of fun.
It's more like Le Mans.
It was pretty sweet. So one of the questions, it was cut the U.S. in half by latitude, or might have been longitude, where by population. So find with to a certain degree, to a certain 3 decimal places, find the latitude or longitude that cuts the U.S. in half by population. And I was like, I have no idea. I haven't worked with spatial all that much, so I'm still kind of not exactly sure how to solve that correctly.
Yeah.
But that was back when I think Ned was coming up with all the questions. So they were really, really fun brain teaser questions.
Ned, for those that aren't watching, Ned was Ned Harding, and he's still alive, but he's just not with Alteryx anymore. He built Alteryx, like the engine, right? And he was the brains behind the. So we miss you, Ned. Come back. So you competed that year, so it was different, and it was just like a bunch of people in a room. Now, So when was the last live one? Nashville, 2019.
Nashville would have been the last live one.
It was so different. It was awesome. It's just like 1,000. It's weird. It's really weird how it's like a couple thousand people just being super nerdy watching people do Alteryx, and we have a good time. Nicole, you won in 2018, which was Anaheim, correct?
Yeah.
Tell us about that experience.
Well, so I think one of the fun parts about that one is I actually wasn't originally supposed to compete.
Really?
So they had picked the top 3 people from the preliminary rounds, and I wasn't one of them initially. And so I figured, okay, no problem. We'll just wait. We'll go check it out and see it. And then I think somebody who was supposed to compete ended up not being able to go. And apparently I was number 4. And so snuck in there right at the end. I think I only had a couple weeks to kind of get my head around what actually was going to be happening, because it was a pretty last minute decision. So I showed up totally unaware of what even was going to happen. I think 2017 was the year they did like a group Grand Prix. So the only time I'd ever seen it was a different format. And so I had 0 frame of reference. If they had told me I'd have to stand in front of thousands of people on stage and like what the actual experience was, I'm not sure I would have done it. But no, it was wild. It was super fun and really adrenaline gets you going. And it was intense. The format's been pretty similar, I guess, the last few years.
Yeah.
But it was 3 rounds, and you got points depending on what you placed in each round. And I think they've mixed that up a few times to change how they do the actual scoring. But the first round, I was stoked. I crushed it. I think I solved the first one in like 6 minutes. And then me and my inflated ego failed to even finish the second round because it was predictive tools and I was not prepared. And then the third round, I think the Anaheim Grand Prix got a lot of hype afterwards because it was a legit split second finish, photo finish. They had to actually go behind the scenes and see which one of us actually pushed the run button first. And I think it was a difference of, I don't remember if it was 9 seconds or 1 second, whatever it was essentially nothing difference in who pushed the run button. And apparently I pushed it first. And so I got to walk away with the giant trophy.
Who was that? Ben Moss?
Ben Moss was in that one. And then it was, I think it was Matt, what's his last name? Matt Adams, maybe? Or I can't remember what his last name was. Matt,
you were tied with, or who you were neck and neck
yeah,
with?
that was the one I was neck and neck with at the end there. And so, yeah, it was pretty cool. It was, I think it was the first female solo Grand Prix winner. There was a female winner and the group won the year before.
Yeah, that was actually Katie. Katie,
yeah.
She works for Alteryx now as well.
Yeah. So no, that was pretty exciting. That was pretty fun. It was just a lot of drama, last second drama. It was great.
Yes, which is how you want it to be, right? You don't necessarily you don't go to watch sporting events to watch your team blow out another team. You want to see.
Well, and then in an ironic twist, I was in another last second one in the virtual Grand Prix last year. I think it was Kenda and I. They had like a split second thing on that. So this is how I operate.
Yeah,
high drama.
Just so everybody knows, she only logged in like 30 seconds before this whole thing started. So
yeah.
And then sorry, Jarrod, you won last year. But okay, so interesting. All 3 of you guys competed last year, right? So
yes.
Claire, tell us about your experience last year. So last year was your first one. Let's talk about that, and then I want to talk about how you're feeling about this one, and then we'll talk about like preparation. Like, how do you prep? What does it look like? What do they give you? Just go. Here we go.
Yeah. So I had a pretty classroom-based and community-based Alteryx education in early 2021. Didn't know anything about the Grand Prix or Inspire and then heard somewhere about Inspire. And so I registered because it was virtual and saw that they were doing the Grand Prix and was intrigued, but couldn't find out how to register. And then forgot about it. And then I found out actually several days after the deadline that the registration was open, and they still let me register and participated in the prelims because I thought that would be a fun way to spend an hour. Pretty much didn't do any preparation other than weekly challenges, which I'd been doing for the last 3 or 4 months. Yeah. I think I completed almost 100 over winter break that year.
Nice.
And was, to my surprise, made it in the top 10 because there were 10 finalists that year. And they ranked us after the first round. And I placed 5th, which I was super excited about. That one was regex based, and I had actually been practicing regex. And I'm grateful for that because I think that's how I did so well. For someone with a total lack of preparation. But I'm glad they did not show all of the second round because I had never used the make group tool. And so I took like this full 16 minutes, used the turbo moves, didn't even finish. So I was great. On that one, Jarrod, our videos were together on that one. I'm glad. I think so, yeah. Or maybe it was George, but I'm glad whoever it was totally crushed me because that was a long, embarrassing.
The make group tool, by the way, is awesome. If anybody wants to figure out how it's used, sounds like next month we're gonna have to do this again. We're just gonna talk about make group. We're gonna bring it up again, Claire. We're just gonna make you feel awful about it.
It's designed to go with fuzzy match, and I learned that once I started fuzzy matching, but I had never used it before. But thankfully I'm now comfortable with how to use it.
Gotcha. And just so everyone at home, make group allows you to say, like, if you have 2 records or 2 columns and they match each other, or it's like column A matches to something in column B. If you have the same value in column A on a separate record, and then so A equals B, and then on the next record B equals C, it creates a third record essentially saying A equals C, so that you're making sure that you're making groups. So it's a pretty cool tool. Sorry, I had to go down that.
No, I was going to say it's one of the cooler tools because it's one of those things where it's very difficult to arrange those pairs and come out with that same output manually. Where it's like you just use the make group tool because it is by far the most efficient way to really do that, and I always think it's really cool. It's pretty slick.
I do wish it had degrees of separation. That is one improvement. There was when I took the advanced exam, there was a question that if it had degrees of separation, it would have made my macro that I had to build totally obsolete.
Interesting. What we're going to chase that. What do you mean by degrees of separation? So like if we go down that same route and it's like, well, if E equals F, then A also equals F, and so you say like, I only care if it's 3 degrees away. It's like the Kevin Bacon thing, right?
I was going to bring up my hierarchy macro.
Oh, yes. Yes. I forgot about that. Do you want to talk about that real quick, Nicole?
Well, Claire.
This is how this works.
We're going to go down the rabbit hole.
We just go, yeah.
Yeah. So I think what you're asking is like, okay, I've got child and parent relationship, and I want to know like how many times does it roll up to the ultimate top parent or whatnot. Yeah. So that's a super common scenario in, I think, a lot of industries, but I worked in accounting, and so account roll-ups and income statement and balance sheet account roll-ups is a big common one. And so I got tired of doing it over and over again, and I built a macro for it. And then because I like being punny and ridiculous, I made a blog article about it, talking about 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon as my example. And so that's on the community somewhere.
Please tell me you scraped like IMDb and actually did a full app with.
I didn't do it. So I looked at doing a full one, and it got a little complicated because, Kevin Bacon is Kevin Bacon, and he's in a lot of movies. And so there were a lot of different types of connections and kind of circular the way it works out with Kevin Bacon. So it was a really simplified example. But there's some good graphics, some good pictures of Kevin Bacon.
So with your hierarchy macro, where does it start with where do you define the top level, or
So you just have a parent-child relationship. So you say, like, it would work for employee hierarchies and things like that too. So like, I'm an analyst, I roll up to a manager, they roll up to a director, they roll up to a VP.
okay.
And as long as your parent-child relationships have like all 4 of those people listed with their boss, then the macro will basically go find your parent, and then it finds the parent of the parent and parent of parent, and it's an iterative macro, and it just keeps going until it runs out of parents.
Which, speaking of weekly challenges, that's like weekly challenge number 6 or something. It's like one of
Yeah,
the
I do think there's
early-
a weekly challenge hierarchy. There's probably a few different types of versions of that, but it's a super common problem. I mean, you can call it hierarchy, you can call it degrees of separation or whatnot, but it's actually a pretty common problem. So if you don't want to have 25 join tools and union tools in your workflow, then you can use the hierarchy macro.
I prefer that.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm teaching Alteryx do's and don'ts at Inspire, so that's one of my do's is make sure you put as many join tools as possible. That's awesome. I can't. What were we talking about before this, Claire? Sorry.
Make
Okay. Make group tool, right? And how you
degrees
crash
separation.
returns
Yeah.
famously because of it. Okay, right. Sorry, that reminds me of another tool that like nobody knows how to use it, but when they find it, it's awesome, and that's the arrange tool.
I was just thinking I don't know how to use that tool. I should learn.
That tool is so great. I'll share a workflow after this of how to use the arrange tool.
I would love that.
And probably the thing that's funny about it is that like if I did the work before it better, I wouldn't need the arrange tool. But yeah. Okay. All right. Anyway, so
I've
back on the topic.
never used the arrange tool.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
I've never used it yet. No.
I've opened up, I think, the example, but I've never actually used the arrange tool in like. I think I've put it together and I put data through it, but I have no idea what it did. So I still don't.
Circling back, then I have a regular expression thing that I just did,
Okay.
and the way that like it was parsing it's looking for like 20 different patterns, and so what it does is instead of like split to a column where you would it puts a column for every pattern that it matches. So the data is awful looking after you're done with it. And in the arrange tool, you can take that and then just make it essentially what like a split to column would look like. And then, yeah. Anyway, so that's a fun thing.
Is it kind of like a transpose then at that point?
Maybe. I have to go back through the use case of why a transpose wouldn't work. Oh, actually, I think it was because I had 2 columns. So every pairing, like it would match to. So if I think the exact use case was we were looking through like descriptions of a product, and there was like a dollar or a number that was like a weight, and then there was a unit. So it'd be like 6 ounces or 3 pounds. And so I had to see where it was a digit and then a space or not a space, and then pound, ounce, whatever the different versions were. And then I actually wanted it to part twice because I wanted a column that was the number and a column that was and so the group, what that allowed me to do is I'll share it. It's a really cool tool. Maybe that's what I'll make a video on.
We have to start doing some charades here so we can visualize what you're talking about.
Yeah. And so it moves. Actually, you know who showed me that tool is Joe Mako. He was the one who showed me how that tool worked, and he's like, it's this really great tool that has so few use cases, but when you do need it, it's great to have. So, yeah. Now I'm curious. Now all I'm going to think about is, can I use the transpose tool instead? Like you're going to be talking
about
and I'm
degrees
going
of
to be working on
separation. I'm like 3 topics back.
Okay, so sorry. So that was your competition last year. So what was it like getting in this year? And then let's talk about how you've prepared. And I'm actually kind of curious so I've never competed. They've never let ACEs until very recently, again,
Until this year.
Until this year. So
You could have.
yeah, so now it's not an
Last
excuse
year,
for me
technically.
anymore.
That's
right,
true.
right,
That's
this is
true. Less restricted last year.
Yeah, so I can't use it as an excuse anymore. But it used to be great. It'd be like, oh, I can't because I'm doing this thing. And really, what it is I would get destroyed when it came to anything predictive. I'd just be like, all right, this was fun, thanks. But so how did you get in this year? And then what have you done to prepare? And then do they provide you with like, these are kind of what we're thinking about? Like, what does that look like?
So I knew coming in, I wanted to race in the qualifiers again, if nothing else, because I think that's a fun hour. But I knew my chances would be slim because they're only letting one ace in the finals, which means I would have to beat Jarrod. I would have to beat everyone else, every other ace who raced in the qualifiers in order to get the spot. So I went in planning to give it my best shot, but not putting my hopes too high. And to my surprise, I earned the most points of all the aces. They never released how many points that was, but I must have gotten a lot of partial credit. Jarrod and I were comparing how many points we thought we got before we found out. I must have gotten a lot of partial credit.
Who else? What other aces did that or signed up for it?
Oh gosh, there's a bunch, I think.
Yeah,
there were a few. I don't recall. I don't know the chat up, but there was quite a few.
When does that happen? So does that start in like November, like when they're asking for?
That was just recently.
Yeah, like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago. Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So now that you're in the final, how many people are in the finals?
5.
5. And are you doing a pit crew? Do you have like a pit crew person picked out to?
I don't know very much about the logistics of that.
Oh, gotcha.
But yes.
Okay. All right. Very exciting.
I don't know. Last year they assigned us a sales engineer, so I'm trying not to get my hopes up.
So they give you somebody. So it used to be like you select somebody.
Last year might have just been different. I also
the virtual stuff last year. They just had to.
The virtual stuff was definitely different.
Yeah.
Well, something I really liked about last year, because it was virtual, they were able to basically pre-record your the different rounds. And then what they did is they arranged it in a bracket, and then you actually you it was like I almost said Final Fantasy, March Madness, where it's the brackets, and that's why Claire and I were split screen next to each other, and Nicole and Kendall were split screen as well.
Yeah,
because that's just how we fell in the running, and then so you could actually have been. You could have won in a bracket, but actually been the bottom half of the competitors for that round, but still progressed on, which I thought was a really, really cool idea. So I wonder if they're going to ever expand it out to, 16 people in a room again and then do the brackets from there. I mean, it would only take, four rounds for 16? 3 rounds?
It'd be interesting to see how you get 16 people on the stage.
I think you have to do some preliminary thing earlier with the 16 and then stage at the end, maybe. Yeah.
I'm trying to think Vegas. I think Vegas had a really long stage, if I recall. Actually, you probably could have done it there, and maybe Anaheim.
Yeah. That's the thing is it's one thing if you, I don't know, do a preliminary round and then you have a few weeks to freak out and prepare. But if you just show up to this thing and have to wing it and give it a go. I think that would have been really cool to experience some of those original Grand Prix just because of that format.
I definitely like the idea of it being in a much smaller space. How did this start? Were what would be fun for a handful of us because we're all super nerds. What we're going to do is we're going to get into a room and we're going to how do you know how that started? Was it just like a kind of a fun thing and then it blew up or what? How'd that go?
I mean, I don't know for sure, but the word on the street was that it started like that. Want to have some fun, want to try to push the boundaries of how fast someone can solve silly questions. And like I said, I think in the last 10 years, that's when it really started moving towards the business use cases and really kind of proving out how fast can you derive insight. Which is great. I mean, but the silliness of the questions before made it really fun, and it was brain teaser like, and so that was pretty cool too.
Maybe that's as you see the Alteryx change, right? You've been around longer than any of us, right? It's just, I see even 6 years ago. My first one was San Diego, which is 2016, and it's just like the landscape of the company, and it's just so different. Going public, and then interesting. So probably as I started using it, maybe not so much as a sales tool, but maybe that's. Do you think that's like runs in parallel with when they started doing the weekly challenges? Like when did that?
Well, there's how many weekly challenges now? 500?
300?
350.
I think they must have started those sometime within the last 8 years.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think when I started doing them, actually by the time I got to Vegas, my first Inspire conference in 2017, they only had like 70 something. I think Plinko was challenge number 75, which is a terrible weekly challenge, by the way. Esther out there, she's listening. The two of us like almost cried over that one. But I think there were only like 75 in 2017. So you figure that was probably 2016. They started doing those if they did them on a regular cadence.
Yeah.
That was how I learned about all the ACEs, because I started at the beginning with the weekly challenges, and then the top 5 people for every weekly challenge, like you, Nicole, and the others. Were that's how I learned your names and your usernames, because you did all the weekly challenges.
Is Sean still in that top 5? Sean, and then Philip. I'm trying to think who was in the top 5.
I mean, I feel like every ACE at some point in time has been in the top weekly challenge bracket.
Not me.
But it's like it was the best way to learn how to use it. When I first started, they didn't have a lot of the other academy resources, but they had the weekly challenges. So like there weren't interactive trainings or learning paths or certifications or anything yet, but they had the weekly challenges, and that is 100% how I learned how to do stuff. And it became a little bit of a challenge trying to post something before Sean Adams. Generally,
it's like a what is it? An urban legend within the ACE group, right? Like I remember for like 3 years, every time we got together, we talked about it. It was just like this thing that you guys always competed on.
Yeah.
They have either of you actually submitted a weekly challenge? Have either of you done that?
I have.
Nice.
I think it's so there was a 4-week series I did earlier this year.
Oh wow.
I think there was one a couple years ago that I submitted as well. But let me tell you, that is no joke trying to come up with a weekly challenge, like getting the data, the sample data and stuff right for something. Like you might have a really great idea, but to actually put all those pieces together and make like a functional challenge that somebody can understand was hard.
I submitted one too. I have one that's like 260 something, but there's actually, speaking of making data sets, I just want to tell you about this tool. I don't know, it's called tonic.ai. You can take your data set and you can load it into it, and you just say, I need to, like, these are the fields we want to randomize, and it's super cool. You should check it out. Everybody at home should check it out.
What is it again?
Use it. Tonic.ai.
Is that what's called synthetic data?
I think it's more like masked data, I guess, because it's not making up any data. It is taking data that you have and then randomizing it. So you won't see names. And what's cool about it, sorry, now we're going down this rabbit hole. What's cool about it is that, like, if you have, like, let's say you have geographic fields like addresses, if you mask one, like the address 1 field, and then you could tie all of the fields after that to that masking. So like if you have Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, you're changing Pittsburgh to Clearwater, Florida. Every time Pittsburgh becomes Clearwater, Pennsylvania also becomes Florida. So you can actually do real, make realistic data. So you should check it out.
You're not getting like Seattle, Oklahoma.
Yes.
It's funny. I once got a client database where I had something like Seattle, Minnesota, and just like, somebody went in and just like flipped their whole their database and walked away
until they're like, do some geospatial analysis on this.
An alternate universe. That's where that one is.
Exactly.
These zip codes are in Canada. What are you doing?
That's awesome. Okay, sorry. So let's backtrack. Claire, what have you done? What have you done this year? Are you doing more weekly challenges, or now that you're? Let me back up. So you were in college, prepping for last year. This year, you were an intern. Is that correct?
I was. Yes.
Large accounting firm.
That's upcoming, but I worked for a small geographic data management company.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
And so
I built some API clients for Jarrod too.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
They're really cool.
Well, now we're going to have to just share everybody's workflow. It's the macro, and then I'm sharing the thing I didn't do very well, so I use another tool. Jarrod, we'll figure out what you're going to share, and then Claire's going to share these API.
Yeah.
So you did, and now how are you prepping for this one? Well, let me ask this too. Are they like, oh, we're going to make sure there's some predictive tools? Because I know this is one of the things I always struggle with, is that like you have these like awesome things that Alteryx does that I don't feel like are perforated within like the user base, like what percentage of users actually use the predictive tools, or what percentage of users actually use the geospatial tools. So I just I guess, how are you preparing for that?
They have told us that one round will be prep and blend, one round will be spatial, and one round will be predictive. But beyond that, anything is fair game. I have done a lot of prep over the last 12 months. Jarrod introduced me to Advent of Code, so that grew my Alteryx skills enormously, just with what you were saying about the brain teaser type challenges, except these challenges sometimes take an hour or 2 hours to solve in Alteryx. That and just automating processes over the last year. My role was Alteryx developer, but I was doing data engineering work in that. But then since I've found out about the Grand Prix, I've been doing some intentional, I've been calling it training and conditioning. That might be putting it generously. But I've been working on the weekly challenges that are Grand Prix-esque, like the ones you can solve in under 15 minutes and the ones that involve those 3 types of tools. I probably should go back and just look through those palettes and make sure I know how to use every tool, because I knew last year when I was studying, I knew if I glossed over make group, it would come back to bite me, and it sure did. I've also been practicing with loud noise. Like I made a playlist of loud noises and have been solving
heavy metal.
Because I like to work in complete silence. So practicing.
I've got a few playlists you can borrow if you want. Now, do they not let you wear headphones this year?
They do like noise canceling headphones, and you have to have like some sort of a playlist or whatever. But
I don't know any of that.
Yeah, and I mean, they may choose to do it differently, but I think they usually give you the noise canceling headphones because like part of the production value of it is that they're also giving the audience an idea of what to expect. And so they'll walk through some potential solutions, or like, we think they need to do this, this, and this to solve the problem. But obviously you can't see that because then you would know how to solve the problem or hear that. And so I had the same problem though. Like they told me about this. I'd never used, like, I don't usually listen to music while working. And they told us that we needed to have like a Spotify playlist or whatever that we could like load with our song choices. And I'm like, what's Spotify? So that was rough. And so I had to get all hooked up with Spotify and come up with a random playlist. But it's hilarious because that event was so crazy and like so cemented in my memory that if I hear like any of those songs, like I can remember the 3 songs that were playing like at the start of each round, just because it was like so intense. It's now like, I don't know, some weird core memory. But those songs always trigger like, oh, the Grand Prix.
What are the songs?
There's a Chris Stapleton and Justin Timberlake one, Say Something. And then there was another one. It was like AJR. It was like a really like high energy, boppy kind of song. And then
Rated Blood by Slayer.
I had like real random eclectic taste, and I think the last one was like some sort of like Vitamin String Quartet, like not the right jam for this. That's what randomly was showing up on my list at the time, and so it was it's just funny. I hear those songs and I immediately think about the Grand Prix.
Awesome.
Forevermore.
That's cool. Did you guys, Jarrod? Where did they do with headphones when you back into this?
No, because they weren't going through the. It was not as much audience engagement with what should be going on. They at the time, I believe it was Scott Jones who was emceeing the one I won in Boston. I think he was still, and I think he did a couple more after that. But at any rate, it was more like kind of trivia and audience engagement that way versus here's what they're doing, here's what they should be doing, which I think is cool. I like both aspects. Back in 2010, they would actually give away the pins for correct answers from trivia from the audience. So that's how the engagement was going that year.
Do you have your jacket available, your pin jacket available? So if for everyone playing along at home, Jarrod has a jacket. So Alteryx Inspire, they give away the pins, which are actually the tools. I hope they do that this year. I hope that's something that comes back. And he and Mark Frisch had have these. Yes, there we go. So he's got all these pins. Are any of those the correct answer pins, or are those all tool pins?
Those all the what?
You said the correct when you're getting a correct answer.
Yeah. I mean, it had to have been some of the. I mean, gosh, here's the R tool.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, wow.
The function.
Oh,
old school function.
Old school function. Yeah, all these are.
Ones.
Yeah, spatial match.
That's awesome.
So if anybody's curious what this, if you're in Alteryx right now, I'm just going to tell them how to do this real quick. If you go to help and then you go to, or I'm sorry, help or options. Where is it? Help.
Yeah. Help about.
Yeah, that's it. Sorry. Help about, and then there's a little flag of Boulder, Colorado. Or it says created in Boulder, Colorado. There's a little flag. If you click the flag, it actually brings up all the old. Yeah, I'm sorry, the Colorado flag. It brings up all the old tools. So you can kind of see what that looked like. And then, of course, their new tools. It has the new image on there. And then also, you can't change it back, so you have to close it. I probably should have warned you before switching. Save your work and then open it back.
And it won't also affect your workflows at all.
Yes.
It just changes the little icon.
Yeah,
the icon. And then
I just learned one was the control click on the Alteryx icon in the about will get you the brick breaker.
Oh yes,
yeah.
I've always clicked on it to get to the I can't remember the one you shoot through the
Space Invaders.
Space Invaders and Pong, so it alternates.
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
But yeah, if you control click, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
You're hearing the secrets right now, folks. All that stuff that's embedded.
How to be super productive at work.
Okay, so Nicole, for designer, can you port more games over into like Super Mario Bros. Or something? Pick up
I'll put that on the roadmap. That's for sure on the roadmap.
Yeah, the license cost for that must be astounding.
Well, isn't everything fair use right now for like all the old Nintendo stuff?
Oh, maybe by now. I don't. Well, probably not Mario. I don't know. This is where we are now.
We'll put some Pac-Man in there.
Yeah. Something I noticed, and I just want to talk about this here because it always comes up during these conversations. Can you show us the geospatial match tool again, Jarrod, on your pin?
Yep.
So everyone will notice there are these little arrows that are coming in. It's actually this is facing the right way. Because
oh my gosh, Treyson, you're such a troll.
I'm not. I'm sorry. I'm not team vertical. I'm just saying that his pin is on correctly based on how Alteryx was then. It used to be out of the box. Alteryx was vertical, and then when was that? I don't know. That was after me. Jarrod, when did they switch to horizontal?
So they did. So horizontal by default had it been like version like 11. But at some point in time, they moved away from numbers to years, then went back to numbers. Yeah, it had to have been around 2011-ish when they went horizontal. I can't remember exactly, but it was that was disorienting.
Well, so it's this funny argument that comes up because like there's probably like a third, I would say, of the aces.
I think there's a statistically high number of aces that are vertical. That is not representative of the normal population.
Correct. Yes. Well, and it's because so many of the aces have been around forever, and Sorry, I guess we'll talk about this real quick. Jarrod, you were the first class, right, or second class?
Second class, yeah, 2015.
Gotcha. Yeah, 2015, and then Nicole, you were 2018, correct?
2018, yeah.
And Claire was 2022. Congratulations and welcome. We're very excited to have you.
Thank you.
Yes. We are excited for you to do great things. Let's talk about the pit. Sorry.
No.
Oh, I'm hearing an echo. Sorry. Let's talk about the pit team real quick, just what that is, and then probably gonna let you guys go. So Claire, you said last year they gave you a pit team. Nicole, you had a pit person, correct? Did you select your pit person?
I got to select mine, which was super fun. He was my co-user group leader, Michael Stead.
Gotcha.
And I think the pit crew's got a rough job because they have to interpret what you're building.
Like, and they have to know.
Who really knows what's going on in your head as you're trying to slam all these tools onto the canvas. So they got a rough job. But he was a really good cheerleader. That's what he needed. You just needed a hype man to be like, you can figure this out. I don't know what you're doing, but you know what you're doing. You'll figure it out. Essentially, the only advice you can give is a pit crew.
I remember seeing Nashville. Ben, again, we bring up Ben Moss. Ben Moss was Phillips, and he ended up winning that year. And actually, we had who else?
They had two that year. I just watched the recording.
Kendo was up there in Nashville, right? And what about Chris Lewis? Was Chris Lewis up there? There was a whole bunch of them.
Now Aces, yeah. And then I just always remember that picture where it's Phil and then Ben's behind him, like after Phil wins, and they're like hugging each other, and it's like. It's very emotional. We all get very excited about it.
Well, I love competing this year.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Oh, that's right, because he's not.
He's going to be out for blood, I think, at this point. It's been a few years since he could compete, since they stopped allowing partners to compete. So. Oh,
that's right. Oh, I'm a partner. Cool. Oh man, that's why I couldn't compete this year. So.
Well, they let both.
Yeah, no, they let partners. You don't have an excuse.
Oh, okay.
the only way out, you have to come work for Alteryx, which was a devastating blow, realizing I can't compete again. So now we're going to have to start up an internal Alteryx screen.
But you could be.
I need this in my life.
So that's interesting. You said that an internal Alteryx Grand Prix. We were talking the other day about an ACE Grand Prix, just something that we did for the fun of it. If someone wanted to start, maybe there's a plan that in a user group. How big is Seattle's user group?
Well, sort of non-existent since COVID, but
got it.
At times it's been, larger than zero.
Gotcha.
Larger than zero.
Maybe Dallas would be the place.
I think Dallas is a big one.
Yeah. They could do their own internal Grand Prix. We have to do the ACE Grand Prix. Everyone except for Jarrod.
Grand Prix everywhere.
Yes, exactly. That'd be fun. Man, now that I'm thinking about it, places with large
regional Grand Prix, and then have it roll up into the main event.
Are they still Grand Prix if they're not the Grand Prix?
Well, you just have to come up with your own racing circuit. So each course would have its own name. You get to pick your NASCAR, your F1 course name for your regional group.
I call it.
Maybe something funny, or even internally. So at a group like a PwC, right? They have so many people. They have thousands.
They do 12 Grand Prix.
Yeah, exactly. They maybe it'd be fun to implement or figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
I would say the problem is setting up the rounds.
Yeah.
Because it has to be secret. You can't let that out, and you have to have someone kind of hold that as a secret until showtime. Well,
let me on that. There's an answer tool, right, that you have to connect through your workflow. Are they still doing that?
Yeah, that's usually how you check your answer. It's just a macro that validates.
Not in the prelims, but in the main event. Yeah.
Interesting. That's gotta be some well guarded information over there at Alteryx. No one gets to have the tool except for somebody. It's like in a drawer.
Actually in a YZip on the community.
Oh, okay. Never mind. It's not. You could get it yourself.
When I'm practicing, I just use joins, and I also sometimes use the crew beta expect equal.
crew macros. Do we want to talk about the crew macros? We got
crew
45 minutes. Man, Mark Frisch. I haven't seen Mark since Nashville, so I'm excited about that. Excited to see what he does this year. If anybody remembers.
Oh yeah, there's gonna have to be some sort of themed outfit. I wonder what he's gonna have this year.
Well, he has
This is gonna be like everybody's gonna lose their minds on next week when we all get to see each other after 3 years.
It's gonna be awesome.
There will be tears. It will be mayhem. It's gonna be awesome.
It was so crazy. So now that I'm traveling again, I randomly I saw Tallis last week in the airport in Denver. He's coming from Brazil, which made that story even crazier. Actually, the craziest part is we worked together, and I didn't know he was coming through. And then I was like, so that was cool. I'm very excited to see the group again. Even the people I work with. So I've been with this group for a little under a year, and I've never actually met anybody in person. But I know Andrew. I've known Andrew Kim for a long time, and except Marcus Montenegro, who is also in this ACE class. He's when you work with people and you're like, I'm pretty smart, and then you meet other people and you're like, I'm not smart at all. I take
it back.
Yeah. Oh, look at this cool thing I did. Oh yeah, that's neat. So Marcus he's one of the things he's working on is a server health check that you can essentially drop a series of workflows on a server, and it just scrapes everything and then builds an output document. And it's super cool. It goes down to like machine level stuff. But who even thinks about that like that? It's
awesome.
It's super cool. We're actually going to have shirts at Inspire that say "Ask us about server health checks." So we're very excited. We're very proud of his work, and we're very proud that he's also an ACE 2 now. So
that's awesome.
But I'm excited to meet some of my guys as well as everybody else, of course. There's actually been 2020, 2021. This is the third class of ACEs that I haven't met yet. So it's going to be a good time.
Nice.
So I think that's good. Anybody else have any questions or any parting thoughts for the Grand Prix? Good luck, Claire.
Good luck, Claire.
Good luck, Claire.
Thank you.
We will all be cheering you on from the front row and booing Ben Moss. I don't think he's going to see this, but if he does, we're all very good friends. So it's just a joke. So
now I can think about the Princess Bride when she's walking out. Just like that, Ben. Just like that.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. Have a great day. I'm excited to see you next week. And actually, by the time it's done, we will have seen each other. So it's going to be good.
It was great to see you, Treyson.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great.
I'm speaking. I'm actually.
Yes.
Oh, yes. It was great. Yes, we had a great time. Remember that funny thing you did on Tuesday? So, yeah, good times. Talk to you later.